For almost a year, I lived across the hall from a man I knew almost nothing about. His name was Mr. Harris, at least that was what it said on the little brass plate beside his door. Apartment 407. Mine was 408. And in all the months I lived there, I never once saw anyone knock on his door. No family, no friends, no delivery person carrying flowers. Nobody showing up on a Sunday afternoon with food. Nobody wishing him happy birthday. Nothing. At first, I didn't think much about it. People live private lives. I certainly did. Most mornings, I left my apartment around 7:30, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, already thinking about work before the elevator doors even opened. Mr. Harris had a different routine. Every morning at almost exactly 8, he stepped into the hallway wearing the same brown jacket. He was probably in his 70s, thin, gray hair neatly combed, always clean-shaven, always carrying a small canvas shopping bag. If we happened to meet, he'd give me a little nod. "Morning." "Morning." That was usually the entire conversation. Then he would walk toward the elevator, and I would go wherever I was going. For months, he was simply the man across the hall. I began noticing things without meaning to. His apartment was always quiet. On Friday nights, when other doors opened and closed and people carried pizza boxes down the hallway, his stayed shut. At Christmas, someone on the third floor hung a wreath on every apartment door. Mine had one, so did his. But while cards began appearing under other doors, nothing appeared under 407. On Christmas Eve, I came home late from dinner with my family. It was almost 11. As I walked down the hallway, I saw Mr. Harris outside his apartment. He was trying to unlock his door while balancing a small grocery bag. There wasn't much in it: a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, something in a can. "Merry Christmas," I said. He looked at me for a second, as if the words had surprised him. Then he smiled. Not a big smile, just enough to change his face. "Merry Christmas to you too." I went inside my apartment, and for some reason, after I closed the door, I stood there for a moment. My family had spent the entire evening talking over one another. Kids running around, someone complaining about the food, someone else taking pictures nobody wanted to be in. I had been looking forward to coming home to silence. Across the hall, Mr. Harris already had it. A few weeks later, we had a snowstorm. One of those mornings when the city seems to disappear underneath white. I opened my door and found Mr. Harris struggling with 2 grocery bags. One slipped from his hand. A couple of oranges rolled across the hallway. I caught one before it reached the stairs. "Here, let me help you." "Oh, I'm fine." "You're clearly not." That was the first time I'd heard him laugh. I carried one of the bags into his apartment. It was the first time I'd ever seen inside. The place was simple, almost too tidy. A small couch, a wooden dining table, books stacked neatly against one wall, an old radio by the window, and photographs, dozens of them. There was one photograph of a much younger Mr. Harris beside a woman with dark, curly hair. Another of the same woman standing beside a lake. Another at what looked like their wedding. And then, a photograph of a boy, maybe 12 years old, standing between them. I didn't ask. Mr. Harris noticed me looking. "My wife, Margaret," he said. He pointed toward the wedding picture. "She hated having her picture taken." I smiled. "Looks like you convinced her a few times." 42 years of marriage, you learn to negotiate. Then his expression changed. "She passed away 6 years ago." "I'm sorry." He nodded. There wasn't much to say after that. I put the groceries on his kitchen counter. Before I left, he reached into one of the bags and handed me an orange. "For your trouble." "You don't have to take the orange." So I did. That orange sat on my kitchen counter for almost a week. I don't know why I couldn't bring myself to eat it. After that, we started talking. Not long conversations. At first, maybe 30 seconds. Then a minute. Then 5. Sometimes we'd meet near the elevator. Sometimes I'd see him checking his mail. Once, he knocked on my door because he'd received one of my packages by mistake. I began learning small things about him. He had worked as a high school science teacher for 34 years. He hated television news. He liked old jazz records, and he believed instant coffee was an insult to coffee. Every Thursday, no matter the weather, he walked 6 blocks to buy fresh bread from the same bakery. Still, nobody ever visited him. One evening, I finally asked about the boy in the photograph. It happened accidentally. We were standing inside his apartment. He was showing me an old record player that had stopped working. I pointed toward the picture. "Your son?" His hands stopped moving. For the first time since I'd known him, he didn't answer immediately. "Yes, Daniel." I waited. He looked at the photograph. "We haven't spoken in 11 years. I didn't know what to say, so I made the mistake people often make when they're uncomfortable. I tried to fix it. "Maybe you could call him." Mr. Harris gave me a tired little smile. "Life is usually more complicated than a phone call." Then he turned back to the record player, and I understood that the conversation was over. Months passed. Spring came, then summer. Our strange hallway friendship became part of my routine. Sometimes I brought him coffee. Sometimes he left books outside my door with little notes. "You might like this one." Once I mentioned that I had been working late too often. The next evening I found a container of soup outside my apartment. No note. I knocked on his door. "Did you leave this?" He shrugged. "Made too much." We both knew that wasn't true. One night during a thunderstorm, the building lost power. The elevators stopped. The hallway lights went dark. I heard a knock. Mr. Harris stood outside with a flashlight. "You all right?" "I was about to ask you the same thing." We ended up sitting in the hallway between our apartments. 2 folding chairs, 1 flashlight between us, for almost 2 hours. We talked about things we had somehow avoided talking about before. He told me about Margaret, how they'd met at a bus stop, how she had laughed at him because he'd missed his bus twice while trying to work up the courage to speak to her. He told me about teaching, about students he still remembered 30 years later. And eventually, he told me about Daniel. Their son had moved across the country after college. At first, they called every week, then every month. Then something happened. Not one big dramatic fight, something smaller, which somehow made it worse. A disagreement about money. Then another about Margaret's health. Words were said. Calls became shorter. Pride took over. Months became years. Then Margaret died. Daniel came to the funeral. Mr. Harris said they barely spoke. He stood 10 feet away from me. My own son. I looked at him. "Why didn't you go to him?" He stared at the floor. "I kept waiting for him to come to me. And maybe he was waiting for you." Mr. Harris looked at me. Neither of us said anything for a while. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere over the city. Then he said something I still remember. "Pride is a very expensive thing to keep." A few weeks later, I didn't see Mr. Harris in the hallway. Not Thursday, not Friday. By Saturday, the newspaper was still outside his door. That wasn't like him. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again. Still nothing. I called the building manager. Mr. Harris had fallen in his kitchen. He had been there for several hours before anyone found him. He spent 5 days in the hospital. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to frighten him. And, if I'm being truthful, enough to frighten me too. I visited him on the second day. He looked smaller in that hospital bed. Without his brown jacket and polished shoes, he suddenly looked his age. I brought him a terrible cup of hospital coffee. He took one sip. This may be worse than instant. Then I noticed something on the little table beside him. His phone. Beside it was a folded piece of paper. A phone number. Daniel. Mr. Harris saw me looking. I haven't called. Why not? I don't know what to say. I pulled a chair closer. Maybe don't start with 11 years. Start with today. 2 days later, he called. I wasn't there. I don't know exactly what he said, and I've never asked. All I know is that when I arrived at the hospital that evening, Mr. Harris was sitting by the window. His eyes were red, but he was smiling. He answered. That was all. He didn't need to tell me anything else. Mr. Harris came home the following week. For a while, things went back to normal. Brown jacket, canvas shopping bag, Thursday bread, our conversations by the elevator. But something had changed. Every Sunday afternoon, his phone rang. I knew because the walls in that building weren't exactly thick. Sometimes I could hear his voice, sometimes laughter. Once I heard him say, No, I remember that completely differently," and then more laughter. The first time I heard it, I stood in my kitchen and smiled. It felt ridiculous. I wasn't part of the conversation, but somehow I felt part of the moment. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning, someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, a man about my age was standing there. Behind him was a woman and a teenage girl carrying a backpack. "Sorry," he said, "is this 407? I pointed across the hall. "Right there." He looked nervous, more nervous than someone should look standing in an ordinary apartment hallway. Then I understood. "Daniel?" He looked at me. "Yes." Before I could say anything else, door 407 opened. Mr. Harris stood there. For a few seconds, nobody moved. 11 years of silence, and there they were, 10 feet apart again, just like at Margaret's funeral. Only this time, Mr. Harris didn't wait. He walked across the hallway. Daniel did too, and they hugged. Not like people do in movies. There was no dramatic music. Nobody collapsed crying. It was awkward, a little stiff. Two men who had forgotten how to be close, trying to remember. Then the teenage girl stepped forward. Mr. Harris looked at her, his granddaughter. The last time he'd seen her, she had been a little girl. She wrapped her arms around him. And that was the moment he cried. I quietly closed my door. That moment wasn't mine. That afternoon, apartment 407 sounded different. There were footsteps, voices, furniture moving, someone laughing loudly. I smelled food cooking. For the first time since I'd moved into the building, the man across the hall had visitors. And they stayed until almost midnight. Mr. Harris lived there another 2 years before moving closer to Daniel. On his last day, I helped him carry boxes downstairs. His apartment looked strange without the photographs, without the books, without the old radio near the window. Before he left, he handed me something wrapped in newspaper. It was the old record player we'd once tried to repair. "I finally fixed it," he said. "I can't take this." "Yes, you can," I smiled. "You're very bossy for an old man. And you're still drinking terrible coffee." We hugged. Then he stepped into the elevator. Before the doors closed, he looked at me and said, "Keep knocking on doors." At the time, I thought he was joking. Years later, I understand what he meant. We live close to people we know almost nothing about. Across hallways, across fences, across desks. sometimes for years. We see them carrying groceries, checking their mail, walking home alone. And we assume that if they needed someone, someone would already be there. But sometimes, there isn't anyone. And the distance between two lives can be as small as a hallway, a cup of coffee, a fallen orange, a knock on a door. I didn't reunite Mr. Harris with his son. He did that himself. I didn't save him from loneliness, and he certainly didn't need me to save him. We simply became friends, one ordinary conversation at a time. But I learned something from the man who lived across the hall. Sometimes the people who seem to need nothing have simply gotten very good at living without asking. And sometimes the smallest thing we can do is notice. Years have passed since Mr. Harris moved away. I still have his record player. It sits in the corner of my living room. And every now and then, when I put on one of his old jazz records, I think about apartment 407. The door that almost never opened. The man nobody seemed to visit. And the Saturday when that hallway finally filled with voices. I used to think loneliness looked like someone sitting alone in an empty room. Now I know it often looks much more ordinary than that. Sometimes, it looks like the person living right across the hall.